my friend, and welcome to the study. Here on the desk, I have a few things that you can see have a theme. We have a book about Shakespeare's garden, and there's a flower from that garden. This is a garden that was planted in Stratford-upon-Avon, with all of the flowers and plants mentioned in Shakespeare's play. Here we have a miniature theatre with players, all the characters in plays. We've played with that theatre before here in the study. You might remember we did a Molière subject. Here we have a small King Henry V edition. And there's William Shakespeare's signature. And the play can be read there. So here we have a small collection of things forming a loose theme, or probably a more focused theme depending on our proclivities, whatever we desire. And that's sort of what we do here in the study quite often. Today we're going to look at what the Victoria and Albert Museum calls collection selection boxes. They've put them online, but you can also see them in person at the V&A in South Kensington. They're boxes from their vast collections that have a certain theme. We'll look at those and then we'll come back to the study and make a few of them ourselves, so we can put some collection selection boxes together, or we could also call them topic boxes. Let's have a look at the V&A. Here we are at the V&A collection selection boxes. Get up close to original prints, drawing and photographs in our collection. This you can see on location in South Kensington at the museum. You can go in and flip through things yourself. It says these period style material techniques can be on display for individuals or group teaching. And here we have some online: architecture, design, Art Nouveau, all kinds of interesting boxes, botanical illustration, computer art processes, techniques, fashion photography, history of photography, LGBTQ, postmodern design, trees in British art, women in photography, and even more. So there are a few of these selection or collection selections from the V&A. Let's have a look at some. The early 1890s saw the birth of a new style in European art and design. What we now call Art Nouveau emerged in several countries at once, various artistic disciplines. The Paris International Exhibition in 1900 marked the heyday of Art Nouveau. By this time, there were few countries in the Western world without some trace of its style. The new art took many forms. It was adopted by, among others, architects, furniture makers, jewelers, and graphic artists. The drive to create new form of art for a new age had never been stronger. The most important outcome of this drive towards the new was the characteristic Art Nouveau form, the whiplash line. It's a decorative line that seems to have a life of its own. Escaping European tradition turned many artists towards the art of other cultures. Japanese art became particularly influential with its bare, minimal style of drawing and flattened space. Japanese printmaking is an obvious ancestor of the graphic works of Art Nouveau. The complex arabesque designs of the Middle East also had considerable influence, as did ancient European forms such as Celtic decoration. Art Nouveau looked to the past and to the future in equal measure. This design is by René Lalique, and his dates are actually 1860 to 1945. It says how he revolutionized the way jewelry was made. He trained as a goldsmith, but gave up traditional methods early in his career. By 1892, he had his own workshop in Paris, where he began to experiment with new and little-used materials and techniques. Before Lalique, jewelry had been mainly abstract. He made insect, plant, and even human forms a feature of his work. The skill of his designs meant that his work did not need expensive, precious stones in order to be valuable. This left him free to use less costly stones, such as bloodstones and tourmaline, and to explore unusual materials, such as horn, ivory, and opal. This one's very interesting. It has some what look to be linden leaves there, with some beautiful green glass emerald cabochons and lacquer of two women. It says here that this pendant has a centerpiece of enamel with an image of two women that may have been designed with the plique-à-jour technique in mind, that uses enamel without a metal backing, allowing light to pass through, as with stained glass. Moving on to the next piece we have is a beautiful illustration here, box 2 by Paul Anka, architect, and Adolphe Crespin. They were both seen as pioneers of Belgian Art Nouveau. Anka's own house on the Rue Vac in Brussels, which he built in 1893, was, along with Victor Horta's Hôtel d'Assel, the first example of Art Nouveau architecture. And here we can see some beautiful patterns, and it looks to be a print. It says there's a hexagonal honeycomb structure occupying the background. Images of bees complete the pattern. This perhaps suggests the tireless industry of Anka's studio, a hive of activity. Let's look at trees in British art. Trees have played an important part in the development of the landscape painting tradition in Britain and around the world. Representations of trees range from the portrait-like to the visionary. Their delicate proportions, complicated textures, and dynamic movements in the undulating currents of the wind have made trees an attractive subject for artists looking to demonstrate their technical ability across a variety of mediums, from pencil to watercolor to printmaking. An artist could make use of the picturesque atmosphere provided by a wooded area where the play of light and shade can provoke different impressions. Often, the abstract entwining of branches and trunks provides a great variety of elements with which the artist can play with. Attitudes towards landscape can be observed in the changing depiction of individuals within wooded areas, where people increasingly appear to use woods as spaces of leisure and recreation, rather than places of resource and work. Trees themselves are also rich in symbolism, built up over centuries of their interaction with society and culture. Mature trees, especially ancient oaks, have been depicted as emblems of continuity and the freedoms guaranteed by the British Constitution. Box 1 is Fairlop Oak and Fairlop Fair by Samuel Hieronymus Grimm, 1733 to 94. The Fairlop Oak in Arnold Forest near the East End of London was a famous tree celebrated for its role in bringing a community together even after the tree itself had died. The annual Fairlop Fair was founded around 1720 by Daniel Day, an eccentric philanthropist. In the changed circumstances of the 1790s, when public gatherings raised fears of sedition, attempts were made to curb the fair. In 1805, a fire lit by picnickers accidentally destroyed much of the Fairlop Oak, and it was finally blown down in a gale in 1820. So you can see the big oak there, its gnarled bark, textured leaves, and the light going through them. These big trees always feature in, I think, every culture as being something ancient and life-affirming, around which communities can gather for support. Remember in Studio Ghibli, the big tree in Totoro, and also one in Laputa, Castle in the Sky. In box 2 we have Forest Scene with Sheep Resting by Paul Sandby, 1731 to 1809. Paul Sandby and his older brother Thomas worked together because Thomas had been appointed Deputy Ranger of Windsor Great Park in Berkshire by the Duke of Cumberland in 1743. his brother became important pioneers there of naturalistic tree painting in the 18th century in British art. You can see here all of these beautiful beech trees in the autumn with the copper-colored leaves, and the worn edges attest to how they worked out in the elements to paint. In box 3 we have this gorgeous painting by John Robert Cousins, 1752 to 97, Gardens of the Villa Pamphili in Rome. John Robert Cousins made 2 trips abroad in the company of patrons who employed him to paint watercolors of the places they visited. In 1782, he went to Italy with William Beckford, the eccentric owner of Fonthill in Wiltshire. Beckford was a great lover of trees. When in Rome, he found the heat and the noise overwhelming, and he sought solace in the peaceful villa gardens. He and Cousins shared a taste for melancholy, and so the dark cypress trees in this watercolor would have held a particular appeal for them. You can see this very calming, peaceful hue, despite there being some pathos about it. I think it's a very peaceful scene. It's all greens and muted green-grey, with a statue and an arch showing that it's Roman. It's a very, very cool colors. Very relaxing to look at. Now let's make some collection boxes together. So the first box we'll put together here in the study is Pokemon, I think. There's some dog sounds happening, but not to worry, it's just the sounds of a very comfortable, relaxed, peaceful dog falling asleep. So for Pokemon box, let's start with Pikachu. Pikachu is an electric type Pokemon. That's why his tail is kind of in a lightning shape. He is a mouse species Pokemon. And you can see the little body looks a little bit like a mouse, except for his long ears. Pikachu's been in every region, I think. In later storylines, Pikachu evolves from Pichu, a cute little electric Pokemon, and he can evolve into Raichu. There's 2 forms of Raichu. There's the Thunderstone that makes the electric Raichu, but it also makes the Alolan form of Raichu on a surfboard, which is both electric and psychic. Raichu is like a larger Pikachu with a long tail and bigger ears. There's been sometimes flying Pikachu, what else we have for Pokemon to put in our topic box or collection selection from the study. We have a Pokemon Ultimate Guide, movie facts and stats. And there's our Pokemon logo that hasn't changed. This started as a Japanese sort of game for cards. And then Nintendo released an electronic game in 1996. And there have been movies and series. And there are some featured movies. All of those feel-good Pokemon movies where the little pocket monsters evolve and Ash and his friends meet trainers and learn how Pokemon behave, how to get along with them, help protect them, and also use them for sparring, all while they are trying to counter the bad guys, Team Rocket, who want to capture Pokemon. Here we have all our characters. Who are your favorite characters in the Pokemon series? I always thought Clement was funny because he was inventing things all the time. Remember, we did a Nurse Joy roleplay in the study before too. Here are all the plots and stories of the movies here. Pikachu and Bulbasaur. Mewtwo. There's some good songs as well. Good lyrics. Friendship. Here's our second Pokemon book. We've actually read this one together in the study before. It's the Pokemon Book of Joy for when you're feeling blue. And there is Jigglypuff, who sings a lullaby that puts everyone to sleep. Yes, Pokemon evolve, and their trainers grow older. But while everything changes, one thing remains true always. Friends can be friends forever. And even if they seem a little different, sometimes you have to look with your heart and not your eyes. So another thing for our Pokemon topic box. And one more. It's in a plastic cover, and no, it's not a passport. It's more Pokemon cards and what looks like a Duot sticker. This sticker is of Duot that evolves from Oshawott. And what other cards have we got? Oh, some really good ones. That is not a card, I don't think. Just there's one. Look at looks like the Sword and Shield, so that's the silver fox Pokemon that evolves into Ninetales. And we've got a bit of distracting noise from outside, but we're going to not worry about that. This is an Eevee Evolve Leafeon. Don't know if you can see that. It's got a plastic cover. It's quite hard. It doesn't bend. And we have Drowsy, an Alolan Grimer, Corsola Coral, Cutie Fly, Glalie, Anorit, Brexen, look at that one. Look at that Meow. Oh look, I think that's our Finnegan back there, yes. Evolve a Finnegan. Meowstic. I thought I had an Esper that had evolved from. Oh, here's a Arcanine. Look at that. The shiny one. Beldum. And some energy cards. Crushing Hammer Trainer card. And Professor Cookie. From the Alolan region. And there's some more here. There. This little Poke coin that we use to play the card game with. It's also got Pikachu on it. I have a nice piggyback. One of my favorite Pokemon. Skarmory, Rowlet, Emolga. Emolga's such a cute one. Dedenne, another little mousy Pokemon. A Dragonair and Dratini. Look at that. They almost look like seahorse dragons. Archeops, Krogunk, Zubat, Elgyem, Solosis, Whalmer, Meditite, Zygarde, and Phoebus. See, that's what we should be doing, is sleeping in the water and blowing bubbles, letting all the bubbles carry our stresses away. And there's a Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon packet. We have some legendary ones as well. Oh, there is our Pokemon collection selection topic box. It's good to put those together with you. Let's put that there and do another one. So we've got Mr. Dog walking across the plastic with his claws, and now he's just settled down, and we can do our next topic box. So for this one, we're going to put together a few things that I found in study. A few things just to start for our collection selection having to do with the Napoleonic Wars from from 1796 to 1814. So here we have a book showing uniforms of the military involved in all of the Napoleonic battles. Quite detailed. Even the saddles for the cavalry. Even the hairstyles for the men. These are the hussars, the French 4th Hussars. Swiss light cavalry. Russian Chevalier Guard. Look at the hats, very broad there, and all of them have very high feather cup at the top. Very long cavalry swords. Poland artillery gunners and the Saxon cuirassier regiment. As you can see how the officers' uniforms and even gunners are a lot about style as well as functionality. Here's a cutaway coat to show the waistcoat underneath, and the flipped back tails to reveal the lining, the richness of the lining. All of this button braidwork and the flourishes on the boots with tassel. Of course, he has knee guards for being a cuirassier mounted. The King's German Legion. So you can see where the British uniform came. And of course, during this time we had the Hanoverian kings in Britain. So that's why they're called the German Legion. And there's that hussar cape, it's always hanging off one shoulder. Here's another one, the French hussars. The marshals, France. Bessières, sorry. My tongue's getting caught up. Look at the beautiful hats with the little cockade there in the hat, gold lace and white fur, and all the brocade on the coats, the sashes, and long tails here, and tasseled boots. More cuirassiers with their armor plate, just plate. The Dutch, French again, Dutch again. Look at all of these colorful pictures. times we've done a few naval battles in the study. Pula Ora. We've done Cape St. Vincent and Trafalgar. And this one was at two of those. This is the HMS Victory. She was ordered on the 14th of July in 1758 and built at Chatham Dockyard. Laid down 23rd of July 1759. And to show you how long it took to build a cutting-edge warship, she was launched on the 7th of May 1765. So almost 10 years after she was ordered. She's a 104-gun, first-rate ship of the line. So each one of these dark spots is a gun port, and you might be able to see the little guns sticking out there, sticking out the hull of the ship. She's the only ship from that era still in active service, although she sits in dry dock in Portsmouth. So as of this year, that's 246 years of service, the oldest naval vessel still in commission. Most famous for being Lord Nelson's flagship at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, that effectively stopped the French sea power or dominion over the sea. Victory was also Keppel's flagship at the Battle of Ushant or Ushant, and as we know, Lord Howe's flagship, Cape Spartel, and Jarvis's flagship at Cape St. Vincent. So if you ever go to Portsmouth, the Victory is, even in her diminished dry dock state, well worth a visit. You can still see the spot where Nelson died after being hit by French musket fire. So I'll put the Victory there. Next for our Napoleonic collection selection. Something very interesting. Napoleon's commentaries on the wars of Julius Caesar, two of history's most famous military commanders. Now, when Napoleon was exiled on St. Helena in the Atlantic, he was very isolated and also very ill. He was dying from a stomach ailment and was in a lot of pain. So in order to distract himself from this, he dictated this commentary on Caesar's wars. And here you can see a map of Napoleon's bridge across the Danube, which was one of his most famous and enduring legacies. Happened in 1809, and one of the things that he writes about in his commentary, as you can see, I've annotated this quite a lot because I found it very interesting to see what Napoleon, and there's a bit of the original French? Well, we've got Napoleon's summary of Caesar's Gallic Wars, and then his commentary, observations. For example here, Brittany, that large and difficult province, submitted without making efforts in proportion to its strength. This is what Napoleon thinks about Caesar's efforts there. The same applies to Aquitaine and Lower Normandy. This is due to causes which cannot be precisely determined, but it is easy to see that the main reason lay in the spirit of isolation and local loyalty which characterized the peoples of Gaul. So I thought that's a rather distasteful statement coming from the former emperor of the French, but also from a Corsican. During Caesar's fourth campaign, he built a bridge to cross the Rhine, and Napoleon, as we've seen in the map, also built a pontoon bridge for his army to cross the Danube to some success. Let's read what Napoleon says about Caesar's Rhine crossing. Both of the two incursions which Caesar undertook during his campaign were premature and unsuccessful. His conduct towards the peoples of Berg and Zoten was contrary to the law of nations. In his memoirs, he seeks in vain to tone down the injustice of his conduct, and Cato condemned him for it. The victory over the peoples of Zutphen was in any case inglorious. When they crossed the Rhine, numbering about 450,000, this would have given them no more than 80,000 combatants, too few to hold their own against 8 legions supported by auxiliaries and by Gaulish troops, who had so much interest in the defense of their territory. Plutarch lauds Caesar's bridge over the Rhine, which he considers a prodigious achievement, but it was an entirely unremarkable work which any modern army could construct just as easily. He chose not to cross using a pontoon bridge, fearing Gaulish sabotage and the risk of rupture. He built a bridge on piles in 10 days. He could have done so sooner. At Cologne, the Rhine is 600 yards wide, but it was the season of the year when the river is at its lowest, and it was probably then no wider than 500 yards. The bridge might have had 50 spans, which, at 5 piles per span, would require 250 piles. With 6 pile drivers, he could have driven them all in 6 days. This is the most difficult part of the operation. The installation of the pile caps and construction of the bridge deck are much simpler tasks, which can proceed at the same time as pile driving. Instead of positioning the 5 piles as he did, it would have been preferable to plant all 5 in a single line, spaced 3 feet apart, surmounted by a pile cap 18 to 20 feet long. This arrangement has the advantage that if one of the piles is washed away, the other 4 can continue to resist and support the bridge spans. Napoleon goes on to describe how his engineers built his bridge across the Danube, 5 miles below Vienna, in line with the island of Lobau. And he He's also got, in addition, Napoleon built a pontoon bridge 160 yards long as a single unit. So he's drawing very heavily on his experiences in that campaign, in which he made 2 attempts crossing the Danube, but with great success getting the army across before the Battle of Lobau. So there we have our third item in our Napoleonic era collection box, or collection selection. And for our last item that I'm going to put in our Napoleonic box, the Emperor himself, Napoleon Bonaparte. And here he is with his military regalia and his hat with a determined expression. Napoleone di Bonaparte, as he was born in 1769, was later known as Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon I, Emperor of the French and talented military commander, rising to his position during the French Revolution. With his successes leading campaigns. He was first consul in the French Republic from 1799 to 1804, and then Emperor of the French. He was born on the island of Corsica in the Mediterranean, supposedly descended from Italian nobility. He served in the French military and distinguished himself as commander during the wars of the coalitions, the Third and the Fourth, where he met the Eastern Front, Italy, Austria, Russia, and the German kingdoms with great success. But a lot of countries didn't like this upstart rising from the ranks to become emperor. He was married to Josephine de Beauharnais, and they had and their love letters survive, at least Napoleon's to Josephine. They are known as two of history's greatest lovers, which is one of the reasons why I find it interesting that Napoleon made little if no commentary at all on Caesar and Cleopatra, or Mark Antony. There we go. And there is our little bit of Napoleonic era collection selection box, or topic box from the study. A lot of the videos from the study take a similar format to a collection selection, and that's what makes them so interesting and fun to make. I hope you enjoy them as well. I'm interested to know what topic boxes you can make, or if you have suggestions for a selection topic box you would like to see in the study. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Have a peaceful rest. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. And as always, be extraordinary.